Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest episode of Live with Marketers at Home Edition. As always, thank you for dialing in wherever you are, whether that's your home office or your bed, we won't judge. My name is Grace MacDonald. I'm a content marketer at LinkedIn and the host of your episode today. We are a year on from the moment when the pandemic first upended all our plans. And although there's a lot more hope on the horizon, it still feels like we're operating in an unpredictable world. The last 12 months has taught us just how quickly marketing strategies might need to pivot in the future. They've changed the marketing mindset. Businesses everywhere are looking to marketers to take the lead on our return to growth, and we can't afford to wait for certainty before drawing up our plans. This is pushing agility to the top of the agenda for every marketing leader. We need to plan for the fact that plans change. We need strategies that have room in them to respond to events, and we need to limber up ready for scrums, sprints, and all types of nimble sounding behavior. But there are risks in pivoting too far towards agility too. If we spend too much time reacting to events, do we end up at the mercy of them? If we're too busy nimbly changing direction, do we ever make progress towards where our business needs to be? We can't afford strategy to stop us being agile, but agility shouldn't stop us being strategic either. The challenge we're going to discuss today is how we balance the two. Before we get started, I want to highlight a couple of housekeeping details. A recording of the show will be available on the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions page straight away afterwards. We're doing live Q&A on LinkedIn Live, so add your questions in the comments and we will try and answer as many as possible at the end of the show. You can also follow along on the conversation with the hashtag Live with Marketers. Please get engaged. And finally, if you'd like to use closed captions while watching this episode, you can toggle them on by pressing the CC button on the bottom right of the LinkedIn Live player. So please get involved. We'd love to hear from you. Now, let me introduce you to my panel. For this at-home edition of Live with Marketers, I've got a great lineup to help us explore the answers to these questions and more. Joining me are Amanda Severas, the Head of International Marketing at WeWork, Mark Murray-Jones, the Chief Strategy Officer for OMD EMEA, and Chen-Wen Tong, Head of Client Development and Managing Partner at Wavemaker. At LinkedIn, we like to learn a little more about our speakers by asking you one thing that's not on your LinkedIn profile. So by way of introduction, Amanda, could you introduce yourself, your work, and tell us something about yourself we won't find on LinkedIn?
Sure. Hi, Grace. Hi, everyone. So as Grace mentioned, I look after marketing for international at WeWork. That region covers both EMEA and Asia Pacific, and look after all of our marketing channels across the region. Something you won't learn from my LinkedIn is that because I'm Persian, I'll be celebrating New Year's on the 21st of March rather than the start of January, as that is part of our custom.
And is there anything special you guys do, Amanda?
Yeah, so under normal circumstances, it's usually a big family celebration, massive feast, lots of food, lots of time for reflection. I think this time we'll be doing our second round of Zoom socializing as we did last year, but hopefully we won't have to do that for too long.
Yeah, if anyone on the call hasn't picked up my Irish accent, we're doing our second St. Patrick's Day virtually as well, so hard to believe it's come around another year.
We're very close though.
Yes, exactly. It's on the horizon. Chen-Wen, I'll pass to you to introduce yourself, your role at Wavemakers, and something that's not on your LinkedIn profile.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Grace. So yeah, I head up client development at Wavemaker in the international division and worldwide. So that ranges from content to clients and looking at new ways that we can develop growth areas for the agency. So it's been quite an interesting year. One thing that you won't know about me is that I'm a huge surfer. And so for the past year, it's been quite hard not to be able to get out to the beach. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to when we can travel further afield and just get on the waves.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. And Mark, we'll hand it off to you.
Thanks, Grace. Hi, everyone. So my name is Mark Murray-Jones. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at OMD EMEA. So I look after our strategic planning product as well as our marketing intelligence division as well. A couple of things about me. I love 90s hip hop. That was definitely the best era for hip hop. And I have 9-year-old twins who are thankfully back at school, which is good news, hopefully for my Wi-Fi speed as well as ambient noise.
I can't imagine having 2 kids that you need to homeschool at the same time. So I'm sure you're having a nice little breather this week and back into the chaos of work. That's great, guys. Thank you so much for telling us something that's not on your LinkedIn. It's great to get to know you a little bit more. So I think we can agree there's a lot of uncertainty still out there, but hope is on the horizon. There's still quite a few different scenarios that could play out. But how are you feeling about the year ahead, Mark? Are you excited, nervous, or a little bit of both?
Well, I can genuinely say I am excited. Of course, it's going to be extraordinarily tough. I'm under no illusions. We know we're facing a long financial downturn, an unpredictable outlook, and that's undoubtedly going to create a degree of anxiety. But, it may sound a little distasteful, but in a way, the pandemic has been an incredible opportunity for us as a business. It's really strengthened and deepened the relationship we have with our clients, because in the face of such disruption, we've really had to work incredibly closely. I think it's really elevated, actually, the relationship they have with us. And I think, as we look ahead, it's a world where marketing and sales have kind of merged through e-commerce. Consumer centricity is at the forefront, which I think opens up real opportunities for us. I think the world is more complicated and dynamic, but that requires smarter thinking and solutions. And I think I'm seeing the scope that we have with our clients shift dramatically. So, it's certainly not going to be boring. Yes, there will be anxiety, but also, I guess, a lot of excitement as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think there's, in some ways, we feel closer apart in terms of like sales and marketing alignment that we made there, and I think we'll get deeper into that during the discussion. I don't want to spend too much time on 2020 because I think we all have talked about it a lot and reflected a lot, but let's just quickly have a look at the challenges and pivots that the industry and the world experienced in 2020. So Chen, what's been the biggest challenge you faced over the last year, and what was the moment that everything changed?
Well, for me, it was literally the onset of the pandemic. Through WPP, we started working with the WHO. The brief was very simple. How can we help people know how to stop the spread of the virus? And so it started with an influencer brief. And within 5 days of even writing the brief to get client approval, we were live and we had influencers washing their hands. Ollie Alexander was doing something with his Years and Years group, and it was fantastic. And we just quickly snowballed into producing a much bigger effort for the WHO because there's demand around the world to educate people. And suddenly it was like a watershed moment. People just came together. We had our creative agencies in New York working with our production hub in London, and my Wavemaker team was outreaching to all the countries around the world for pro bono media. And, we had nothing except a race against time to guide us. We knew what we needed to do. And for me, that was the moment I saw what we could do, without the traditional processes and structures and territories and P&Ls and everything. We have so much potential when we just reach for all the opportunities that agility gives to us. So for me, I think that's something looking forward to 2021 and beyond, is that we should be incentivized to really question the processes and structures we've got, and disincentivize people and organizations from just blindly holding on to things from the past. So I've seen what it can do, and I'm really excited about what we can do going forward.
That's amazing. The impact that marketing can have and jump in to do something on that global scale and make such a huge impact to what was an incredibly scary time. So I don't think people spent too much time thinking about who was on the back end of a lot of those decisions and processes and great campaigns at the end of the day, right? If you boil them down to what they are.
Yeah, I think it was extraordinary, the speed with which we had to respond. It was so abrupt. You say, when did things change? It was almost immediate, right? And what amazed me was how quickly people adapted and how quickly they changed, because necessity creates that need to just shift quickly and change the way that you do things. And I think that's both client side and agency side. It was this consistent approach of just rolling up sleeves and getting on with it, and having to respond very quickly to what was in front of us, day by day, hour by hour.
Yeah, we were we had a TV campaign live in 6 weeks. I mean, for anybody who understands, like, it was on CNN. I watched it and I couldn't believe it. But that's what happens when people are like committed to a cause, not looking at who's doing what, and just focusing on getting the best out of themselves and from the organization. I rarely had to ask for any permission. I said, who wants to join? And all these people jumped in. So it just shows you, when you have a mission, anything is possible.
Yeah, and I think as stressful as it was, dealing with new lockdown restrictions and constantly changing government regulations, and just knowing that the scale of this pandemic was so huge, it was obviously terrifying in many ways. But I think just what you guys have just touched on, that level of collaboration and that spirit of let's just get this done together, was also so exciting. I think, within our business, this kind of entrepreneurial spirit has always been quite core to our culture. So it wasn't necessarily new for us, but I would say it definitely amplified the level of partnership between functions. We suddenly had to work really closely with building operations to try and, share messages of how we're improving the health and safety of our spaces, worked really closely with sales to understand what our customers would need, and identifying all of these new needs in real time, which was it was so exciting, because it meant that that level of collaboration became a necessity rather than a nice to have. I share Mark's sentiment. I'm really excited about this year. I think now that those partnerships are in place for so many businesses, the sky's the limit.
Definitely. I think as well, for everyone who's on the call, marketers and other roles, everyone should take a quick pause now and think about all the things they achieved over the last year in the most stressful of circumstances. And Mark had twins at home. There's a lot going on. But if you want to let us know in the comments what kind of big personal or professional projects you achieved this year, is small wins are things that we should celebrate and take a minute to think about. So Amanda, WeWork must have faced very different challenges and opportunities in different countries throughout this whole year. So did you need to vary your approach and the role your brand plays for its customers based on the different countries?
Yeah, for sure. So I think when we first entered into the pandemic, I was just covering the EMEA region, which is 16 countries. And, lockdown restrictions were so different in each of those markets. And so that was a challenge in itself from a marketing perspective. But I think it was quite interesting to be connected to a global business, because of course we were seeing what had happened in China and that side of the world, and we were also seeing people come back to work. So we knew that the future was in sight, and we knew what it potentially could look like, which meant that we had an opportunity to play a slightly different role with our customers, and offering some reassurance and just showing that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So I think from kind of a macro perspective, the role for us was really to act as a thought leader and a partner to businesses which were navigating an entirely new normal. Every head of real estate, every CEO, every business decision maker had to suddenly completely rethink their real estate strategy. And it was exciting for us, because actually our core value proposition didn't really change. Flexibility has already been a really important part of our marketing message, and we operate in an industry that is quite rigid and quite old school. So all of a sudden, as a result of the pandemic, there was this massive shakeup, and it was kind of a cue for us to come and start more heavily marketing our services to get people in a more agile way. So I think that was quite exciting, just toying with different messages and seeing what resonated in that context. But But equally, I think at a more tactical level, what we had to do, which was new for us, was address health and safety concerns, because those concerns didn't exist for being in a physical space before. So the role for marketing expanded, to using channels like email, just more closely activating our CRM to start to address those concerns. So there was a lot of that, just kind of thinking about how, at a high level, how we can deliver a more reassuring message that there is a future and that we can help you partner to adapt your real estate strategy to what's happening right now. And then at a more tactical level, just reassuring people that our ops team had stood up a range of solutions very quickly to make sure that our spaces were still safe to operate in, because there are so many businesses that are doing mission critical work that do need to be in our buildings and still need to be in our buildings. So it's important that we got that message across in a succinct way and in a timely way.
It's great to hear. We have lost Mark for a moment, so it wasn't the kids stealing the internet. I think. Hi, Mark, you're back.
I tempted Providence. I mentioned the kids. So apologies for that.
That's no problem whatsoever. Well, the next question, actually, Mark, I was going to ask of you, so I'm delighted that you were back in. But both Mark and Jenwen, you have strategic roles advising your clients. How strategic has it been possible to be when everything has been uncertain, Mark?
Well, in many ways, I think that strategy has been needed more than ever. I head up a division of 15 strategists across OMD EMEA and then across the region. And I don't think our services have ever been required so much. I think uncertainty breeds a requirement for strategic thinking. We're looking at a very, very different circumstance, and suddenly we need people to think differently and join dots in a very complicated and fast-moving circumstance. So we've certainly had to strategize more, but we've had to do it at speed, and it's a slightly different approach. It's slightly more focused on what's immediately in front of you. It means being able to apply ways of working or interpreting and sourcing data in a faster way, but it's still strategizing. So strategy was still enormously important, but I don't think that should be confused with sort of longer term brand thinking, which of course, is part of strategy. And I do think undoubtedly, and I think with good reason, totally understandable, many of our clients could only look at immediately what was in front of them. So, it was that case of focusing on cash flow, focusing on the business, and perhaps, having to put to one side those longer term ambitions. And actually, I think as we moved probably into the summer, we began to realize that we needed to take a step back and find a kind of dual way of working, because that immediacy was never going to go away, but we had to find space to think about the longer term as well. And we did that very deliberately, because the danger is, of course, you get very stuck in just playing what's in front of you, which is important, and you miss that longer term opportunity.
Definitely.
I think for us, we've seen our clients have to look deeper into the impact that their budgets and their marketing plans have for their business. Because as much as our business is designed to generate demand, with the furloughs, with the other decisions that we're making within the organization, they had to see if they could even handle the demand, or if they could even have the right resources support. So it sounds a bit counterintuitive, because you're trying to generate as much business as possible, but they had to think about the knock-on effect in a very immediate way, because the brand experience as a result might not actually be as it is promised. So it was quite interesting to get a bit deeper insight into how our clients are working and looking at their capabilities internally to meet the demand.
And so different depending on category, right? I mean, it was extraordinary. There were certain categories. We have a pasta brand. They couldn't keep up with demand, frankly. In other instances, we have travel brands, we have end brands, and their business was just frozen, dead. And the response to that is very, very different. So not only are you reacting to this incredible disruption at speed, you're having to do very different things depending on the dynamics that play in that particular category.
Yes, and we definitely saw that inside LinkedIn as well. For anyone on the call who's not aware of kind of LinkedIn structure, we have talent, marketing, sales, and learning. So our marketing and sales business has done pretty well, right? Everyone in the sales org has moved to virtual selling. So they're using tools like Sales Navigator very consistently. Where our talent business, we understood that people aren't hiring, right? They just didn't know what was going to happen. So the shifts you had to make inside an organization as well, it was really interesting over the last year. So we are well into 2021 now, and I wanted to ask you a bit more about the future of planning and strategy. We've come to the end of the traditional planning period for marketers and their businesses. But how is that experience different at the start of 2021, Amanda? And do you think it will stay different in coming years?
I think it was different, just going back to what we said about having that close kind of cross-functional collaboration in place. And I think part of that was not only getting closer to prospect needs, but also, getting really rigorous in terms of mining insights about how our members were experiencing our product and what new needs might arise from that. So I think in terms of the way we're approaching this next year, it's really, really focused on gathering those insights through all of the channels that we have, and just making sure that we are operating in a really customer-centric way, and that's already, that's yielded a few different kind of insights and strategies in itself in this year, in that we've come to understand, which is obviously not surprising, that the role for the office has really changed. So, it's no longer going to be in the way that it was a place for focus work. And we've learned now that some types of work can be performed at home, others can't. Building work, as is the case for me now, will often get in the way of Zoom calls. It's difficult to manage having kids at home and a whole host of other issues around that. So from speaking to clients, we've come to realize that there's an opportunity for us to reshape our product to facilitate collaboration a little bit better. So we've actually launched a new offering, which is called a collaboration hub to facilitate that need. So that's been really interesting. I think we'll also just perform similar levels of due diligence to help us continue to innovate. We've also got some new product launches coming up this year, which are, again, addressing new needs that have arisen out of the pandemic. One is an all-access pass, which means that you can access any of your local WeWork buildings, of which we have many, across almost 40 countries around the world. So, again, I think it's just that really, really tight connection with the customer, constantly doing that analysis in real time to understand what new needs are going to come up. And making sure that the connection with product, with sales, with our public affairs team, everybody who's involved, operations, is really close, so that we can just accelerate our innovation plans. So I think that's definitely something that will continue, and that, in addition to making sure that we keep taking feedback from the customer to understand how to improve our product and our business lines.
Yeah, I think that deep customer listening is what has just been coming up in a lot of these types of conversations, and really has brought us back to the core. I think some marketers, we had strayed, right? We get excited and there's so many new things the whole time for us to do and try and test. But really looking at that, like, customer experience and customer success as your core value really helps us kind of return to growth. So at Wavemakers, have your clients started asking different things of you as part of the planning process, Chen-Wen? And what do they want to know?
As Mark said, it does depend on the category you're in. But I think no matter what, 2021 is looking better for virtually everybody. And as a result, they're asking for lots of scenario analysis. And that's not something we've traditionally done lots of, because it requires lots of data, lots of time, lots of assumptions. But we actually have just launched a tool that actually allows us to do that from a media standpoint. So, what type of parameters do you want to address and adjust? And so luckily we're doing that actually a lot more faster than we could have traditionally. It's based on AI. So that scenario analysis is something that I think is just going to be part of the planning process going forward, because, clients are asking, what if we go all in on video instead of display? What if we go all in on TV and out of home? You know, something they might not have just considered investing so heavily in before. And those are just, they're not just channel selections. It's looking at potential traffic. It's looking at potential impact on their own and their new kind of brand propositions or product propositions, because now e-commerce is much more at the forefront of those KPIs that are impacted. And so, you know, for us, I think we want to continue having a range of these kind of agile-based questions, because it brings us a lot closer together. You know, we feel like we're problem solving in real time. We're not following super traditional, long planning processes. We're answering much more strategic questions and discussing the pros and cons together. And so I think, you know, ultimately planning is going to continue to be about making those smarter choices. And this gives us an opportunity to take bigger risks than we probably would have had before.
Amazing. And Amanda, have you guys seen your targets or timeframes changing that you're working towards in comparison to last year?
Yeah, I think, well, when we first entered into this pandemic, we did do an exercise of just kind of reassessing our targets. And I think somebody mentioned it earlier, took a slightly more short-term view on performance and, you know, whether or not our investment was effective, particularly within paid media. So we did start to change our approach there, and we had a few triggers in place, you know, just so that we could closely align with markets as they were going into lockdown or coming out. So in that sense, our approach to performance and our targets have slightly changed, and we've had to really closely monitor the trends on, you know, a month by month basis, just to understand what we can expect from marketing in this new world. So those targets have slightly shifted, and then as I said, our innovation plans had always been in place. We had planned to launch products like All Access, but this whole process and this kind of new level of demand from our customers has accelerated that process. So yeah, I'd say we're just kind of full speed ahead in some of the plans that were drawn out towards the back end of last year, which is great because, you know, I think we're just breaking down walls now and making sure that nothing gets in our way, because we know that this need is, you know, it's really hot now, so we have to strike while the iron's hot.
Definitely. The innovation that has happened over the last year has been absolutely outstanding. So the future is exciting for marketing, with lots of opportunities and challenges when it comes to balancing agility. In your opinion, Chenwen, how much agility and flexibility should there be in marketing plans? And is there anything that should be always fixed and what should be flexible?
Well, the traditional easy answer is, well, it depends on the brand, on the industry, because no brand or industry is operating business as usual. And you can't just like drop agility in without really thinking about, you know, what is it for? And I think, you know, being in an agency and in an international role, you actually see that all businesses are changing in several sectors and geographies at once. So the question is about the degree of agility and flexibility you're able to achieve in the short to medium term, because I think agility is assumed, but it's the amount of which you're able to start integrating and building into your processes from now going forward. So look at a client or a brand starting point in late 2019, you know, how digital were they? Because, you know, very simplistically, clients who have been testing and trying and creating new ways of using digital over the past 10 years seem to have had a much wider range of abilities to incorporate agility into. Because early on, if you introduced digital marketing, you were kind of breaking rules, you were breaking down some silos and processes, and they had to have agility baked back into them. So, you know, for me, clients that have had digital in them and processes based on digital marketing are able to flex a lot more going forward. That being said, it's not about achieving 100% flexibilities, because at the end of the day, marketers, you know, we know that our brands need to stand for something. And how a brand stands for something depends on how it behaves and its beliefs. And those beliefs have to be fixed. You know, you have to stand for something. So, you know, more than ever, I think the brand purpose itself becomes even more of a bedrock that you grow everything around. You know, we've seen the brand purpose in slides as the brief more than ever before. There's not kind of like 4 layers past the brand belief that, we're trying to address. We're going back to the basics. And I think the range of flexibility you're able to incorporate and express in that is super exciting. And, audiences, content, social, e-commerce, that becomes part of your repertoire. And this is a great jumping off point for incorporating all the new things that we now know matter.
Fantastic. Mark, we touched on this when you were doing your introduction, or kind of what you were thinking about or feeling for the future. So from what you've experienced with your accounts over the last year, do you think that marketing strategy is becoming bigger than just marketing? Is it important to collaborate more with sales, customer service, and other teams as businesses try to return to growth?
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly. And I think that it's long been the ambition, I think, of progressive marketing and media agencies to have a greater influence across the client's value chain. We've always wanted to expand our remit to have a greater input into, a broader array of elements within the client's operation. Often that's proved frustrating and difficult to do, and I think in part that's down to, if I'm honest, silos that exist within our clients, because historically, I can think across a number of different categories where, the people that we dealt with on a daily basis from a client perspective were very keen to extend and integrate, but the silos that existed within the organization made that difficult. What's happened, I think, and I guess it was happening pre-pandemic with the growth of e-com in particular and connected retail, but the reality is that silos were already breaking down, which was frankly good news for us, because it gave marketing and media a genuine cause and reason to be connected and more integrated with the other areas within the business. But I think with the pandemic, what we've seen is that's just been accelerated. And now that kind of ability to connect all of those different areas is non-negotiable. It has to happen. And what we're seeing more and more is, regardless of category, actually, this holistic focus on the consumer experience, and the consumer experience in all its guises, increasingly being the most important differentiator in many categories. And where that is the case, you need to create, intuitive, connected, rewarding experiences for consumers. You can't afford to work in silos anymore. So, the environment has forced the hand, and it's those silos are breaking down, and it's happened at speed. And I hope, as we come out of the pandemic, that positive picture of breaking down silos will remain.
Amanda, have you seen that on the brand side over the last year, that the silos are breaking down between all different departments inside WeWork?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an especially important consideration within the B2B space, because you've got to think about the context in which your marketing message is being delivered to people. And right now, business leaders and decision makers, or at least the ones we're targeting, have so much to think about. Like I said, they have to rethink their entire real estate portfolio. There are all these different new considerations for the P&L. So it's really, really critical that as a business, from all perspectives, we're thinking about the way that we can make that process of procurement easier and smoother. And I think that, that has implications for, like I said, the way we operate. And our building operations team have done a really good job of just addressing, these new needs that I mentioned. But also the way that we sell, just condensing the sales cycle, enabling a virtual sales experience where it's necessary, and the way that we're talking to customers. I think just the value needs to be really, really clear. And I think this is true of all brands, is, we can no longer talk in these abstract kind of ways. Our purpose, to Jen's point, needs to be really obvious. And so I think that's one thing for us, is just making sure that connection has been facilitated so that we understand what that need is, so we can really clearly articulate it through all of our marketing channels.
Definitely.
The point about purpose, sorry to jump in there, but just earlier, I've been dropping on and off, I apologize for that, but the point about purpose is really interesting, because you might intuitively think, at a time when people are having to respond quickly and to what's immediately in front of them, something like brand purpose may sort of get deprioritized. But what's been really interesting, and I completely agree with the point, that purpose seems to have become more important. How purpose manifests itself, I think is starting to change because of the way people are prioritizing what's important to them. But that's kind of, I guess that surprised me a little, because, you had the naysayers talking about the real value of purpose.
I will never get it. I was just getting to the good part. It brings up a good conversation, I guess, as well. Oh, there we are, Mark. Will we let you finish your point, or?
Well, I'm not sure what bit you got me up to. I'm sorry, this is never happened before in a year. Oh, yeah. Well, I was just saying that I think that the idea of how purpose manifests itself has changed. So, it's what's important to people, what's important in their lives and their needs has shifted. And I think it drives an even greater requirement for, more authenticity and a focus on being useful rather than kind of highfalutin promises or whatever. But it does mean that brands have to take that seriously, and it has to work out, it has to manifest itself in a consistent way across the consumer experience. That surprised me in the year we've just had.
Yeah, the same here. We actually we started working with our agency Vania Media to try and test different messages across some of our priority markets, and so we use this dynamic kind of creative production tool which they have, which gives you a read on performance in real time, and we're testing all kinds of different messages about just general themes around the pandemic, how people are finding working from home, and one of the things that came through really clearly is that a really clear human-centric message about managing dispersed teams, or all kinds of new challenges that were being presented to management was resonating really well, which was so interesting because I think in the old world that level of emotion might not necessarily resonate within a B2B marketing campaign, but I think that this whole process and event has just made us all feel a little bit more human, and I guess for that reason that kind of that level of emotion in our messaging has suddenly become a lot more powerful.
Yeah. It's quite interesting because you're right, B2B language is going to start sounding like B2C language or just normal language. That's just not happened before, so we're just a lot more human, which I think is a good thing.
Definitely. And we're seeing it across our clients at LinkedIn as well. We work with a lot of financial institutions, and I think they really stepped up to this challenge, and they have a bad reputation for things that have happened in the past, of course, but even small things like allowing us to tap our phones up to £60 or dollars, whatever currency, and then promoting that as a way to stay safe in the situation, right? Because you're contactless. So what they did is really cleverly and importantly made sure that they were just being this trusted advisor to help you through this experience, and it's worked really, really well. And I think we're seeing that across a lot of different industries where it didn't happen before. It just wasn't ever part of a marketing conversation, I think.
I think there was a big difference between those corporations who immediately came out and made statements which might have felt a little hollow, and those corporations that were able to develop thinking and actually help out, but actually genuinely contribute to the situation, show empathy, show authenticity, and suddenly it works. It is more important, and I think that's a really important part of what we've just learned over the past year.
Yes, and hopefully it's going to stay like that as well, and that we won't lose our way along the return to growth. So it brings up a good question as well. You guys have mentioned testing out different creative channels and tools, but was this a period for testing new approaches and media channels, or was it and will it be best to double down for the foreseeable future on what works best? Amanda, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I think in the early phase of this new world or adventure, there was a lot of emphasis on testing, and like I said, we just took a shorter term view on performance and whether or not what we were doing was working, particularly from a media standpoint. But I think just these new needs that have come up have just brought about kind of a different view of the value of some of the different channels we have at our disposal. Because whereas before we were able to, really heavily rely on media and had a really predictable outlook as to what that would deliver for us as a channel, we were also really heavily reliant on events, especially for, new openings. Bringing people into our spaces is such a core part of that journey. So suddenly we needed to test out new channels, and I think we've been focusing on being really efficient. Email has been hugely beneficial in just getting frequent and really important kind of transactional and functional messages out to our core audiences. But also we have, like many brands, just invested more heavily in content. And just going back to what I said about thinking about the role that we can play as thought partner and also as business partner to our customers. We hosted a webinar at the very beginning of this process, which just spoke about the way that people in China had returned to work, what that process of actually going back to an office space looks like. Showed that we had sanitization stations that were stood up in all different areas of our buildings. There were markers in different areas of the buildings that would encourage people to observe social distancing. So I think, being able to showcase those learnings from other areas of the world and channel that through content marketing has been a really interesting opportunity for us that we've been kind of testing ongoing. But again, this was all new. Like these messages are entirely new. These learnings are new for us as a business. So I think that kind of testing and learning mentality has been really important for us to grow. But I would say, I think there was, temptation for a lot of businesses to just turn marketing off completely at the very beginning, especially from a paid perspective, because we're all suddenly, so mindful of our P&L. But for us, we knew it was really important just to keep our brand top of mind and make sure that momentum stayed in place, so that when we were going to rebound and welcome back demand post-pandemic, that our brand wasn't lost. So that was really important, in addition to just making sure that we were surfacing these learnings from all different areas of the world, because it was so unsettling. Nobody really knew when they were going back to the office, but so many people were desperate to, because of all of the internet and work from home challenges that we're still facing today.
I think it's really interesting, the year we've just had with regards testing new things. You literally don't have a choice. You have to be testing and learning at speed. But the balance is also not to lose sight of marketing fundamentals. And I think there was almost, as I think back to March, April last year, there were a lot of people running around thinking the world has changed, and obviously it had forever, but they were forgetting those marketing fundamentals as well. So it's that balance between saying, certain things remain key, those fundamentals, but you have to test and learn at speed because so many other things have changed. And it's getting that balance between the two within everything that's going on. That was certainly something that we learned very quickly, I think, within the first 3 or 4 months, that ability to just keep a steady course in some areas whilst also rapidly testing and learning elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think the space of virtual events is something that we won't have time to talk about today, but that's where innovation and creativity and completely nuts ideas has come out very, very quickly, where all of these in-person physical events quickly had to shift into something very different and difficult for the people organizing them. And we have a great piece of research coming out soon, which you'll find on the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions page, called The State of Virtual Events. So looking at that whole sphere of what's happened and what are we going to keep, and kind of figure out hybrid events going into the future. So that brings me into my final question I want to ask you before I pass the reins over to our audience and ask you some of their questions in the last final few minutes. As a reminder for our audience, you can submit your question to any of our panel in the comments or using the hashtag #LiveWithMarketers. So the final question for me, is there one pivot you've made in the last 12 months with your clients or yourself that you're definitely going to keep going forward? And let's start with you, Mark.
I would probably say sort of more purposeful working. There's nothing like being taken out of that kind of traditional way of working, almost on autopilot, going into work every day and working in a certain way. If you get shifted into a completely different way of working, it makes you realize how you spend your time effectively. And there are some things that I find a lot easier, a lot more efficient to do working remotely, actually, but there are other things that are a lot tougher. So, using my time and being more purposeful about my time and using it more productively is the thing that I will probably take out of this in terms of the way I work and also the way I work with my clients.
Grace, was that for me?
Yes, sorry, I think I was still on mute. We nearly got there with no muted conversation. But yes, any tidbits that you keep.
Well, it wouldn't be a virtual event if there wasn't a mute issue. So I think we're going to keep that going into the future. But I think similar to what Mark said, being really protective about the time that I do have that I'm not working, and I've seen that across our entire company, where when somebody is off, they're completely off, and everybody's incredibly respectful of that time, because we know that it's so easy to blur those lines. So I think the respect for personal time of oneself, of others, has only increased. So I think that's a great thing for us to practice together.
Definitely. And Amanda?
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think from a personal perspective, also just making sure that I'm a bit more regimented about when I exercise, because it's something that you really have to force under these circumstances. But from a business perspective, I think it's such a basic principle of marketing, but just that level of customer centricity that we have, we're now making sure we're really focused on, I think is so important for this year. And we now have, as a business, we've got a member experience team that are really just focused on making sure that we are delivering for the customer. And we're starting every management meeting with, what are we hearing from our customers? What do we need to change? So I think just that level of focus and rigor on what we need to deliver, and making sure we've got the data and insights to back up those hypotheses is really critical, and something I'm keen for us to not lose.
That sounds great. And as a content marketer, I think I love that content has really come out as a helpful tool over the last time, and a strategy that's really, really resonated with audiences. That's something I'd like to see from all brands going forward as well. Guys, thank you so much for such a great discussion. I think I could keep you here for hours, but I am going to pass it over to the audience now. So I'm going to jump into some audience questions. So the first one I'm going to give back to you, Amanda, and it's: uncertainty can be exhausting for marketers, and it certainly seems to create more work. What's your advice for staying energized and resilient this year?
I think the first thing is, just try where you can to adopt a positive mindset and a growth mindset. I think, the last year has been super challenging, but challenge is good. And I think, as we said, there's a lot of fun to be had in just tearing up the rule book and, starting from scratch and figuring out what we needed to do and breaking down silos. So yeah, as a first principle, I'd say just embrace the challenge. This whole experience has been a really career-defining opportunity for marketers. So, make sure you're thinking in that way. And then the other thing, and one thing that I'm just very cognizant of as a manager, is making sure that we're spending an equal amount of time discussing the challenges as we are celebrating the wins, because, these new circumstances have made some aspects of our job a lot harder, but that just means it's so much more rewarding when we get the right campaigns out of the door, or see business results from some of our marketing efforts. So I think it's really critical that those discussions are frequently had, and you just take the time to celebrate, talk to the effectiveness of cross-functional collaboration, showcase the work to the rest of the business. So yeah, for me and my team, I think that's the way we've managed to stay energized and excited about new opportunities ahead.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So our next question is a little bit on the longer side. So I'm going to paraphrase it, and hopefully I will do it justice. But Mark, I'm going to give this one to you. So it's about how marketers often focus a lot of our time in pre-sale and driving sales funnel. But what about the often neglected post-sale retention and upsell part of marketing? What advice and tools have you got for your clients? What works and what doesn't?
Well, again, that differs enormously by category, but I'd agree entirely. And I think, part of the fact that we are seeing this breakdown of barriers and silos between marketing and sales and CRM means that we can develop a more connected and more sophisticated approach to after sales. and whether that be, whatever your objective might be. It might be increasing loyalty, it might be increasing lifetime value, it might be upselling, whatever that might be. You have now, I think, a far greater opportunity to create a more data-informed approach to that after-sales area. And what might have felt slightly separate historically is now part and parcel of that broader consumer experience. And there are tools that we are developing and have thankfully started developing before the pandemic hit, which give us that opportunity to look at a more granular level and start to draw in first-party data, CRM data, which we can then inform not only the activity we might do in that post-purchase phase, but also then loop around to start to inform some of the activity we would be doing at other parts of the customer experience. So there's a greater opportunity there, without doubt.
Brilliant. And Chenwen, someone had asked here, what tools or technology do you use when you're scenario planning? Could you walk us through that a little bit?
Well, we, just before the pandemic, actually across 2019, we developed a tool that we call Maximize. And what that does is it pulls in data from Live Panel, which is a WPP survey, as well as historical media channel data. And it allows us, based on certain audiences, to kind of anticipate, what the right ratings would be, what the reach curve would be, and you put in certain objectives that you want to hit. And it spits out basically, how close you are to those objectives. Hands up, I'm not a traditional media planner, but I saw this tool and I know it's really changed the game for at least our team members, because now instead of spending time like running numbers, per channel, per scenario, we can do that and then we can do that quickly, and then the planners can spend their time actually focusing on the implications and thinking about the strategy and the creativity around that. So that's a tool that we have within Wavemaker. And if you have further questions, you can feel free to ask me, and I'll probably pass you on to my colleague who knows a lot more.
I love that. Straight to someone else.
Yes, exactly. No, it's brilliant. It's powered on AI, and I know I have to drop the AI thing in there because it is 2021, isn't it?
Yeah, I think everyone has look to invest in that area, and I think the opportunity of AI and automation to get you to, I suppose, the standard answer, quite quickly, is a huge opportunity. That then provides a lot more time and a lot more space for planners to elevate that plan, through various different levers, whether that be context or content or whatever it might be. But you use the AI to get you to that standard answer, and then you look to elevate it. And I think that's something that is starting to become more and more prevalent in agencies in this world.
And I think that leads us nicely on to our next question as well, which I will give to you again, Mark. It's around what technology would you rely on the most over the next year? So this can be something for your own work or for your clients.
Probably take some. I mean, Microsoft Teams. I've never dropped off calls on Microsoft Teams. I'm not blaming this platform, but we were fortunate in that as an organisation, we're in a regional hub, so we invested in Microsoft Teams way before the pandemic. So when it hit, we just went straight into it. I just do not know what life would be like without it. More personally, my wireless headphones. I think one of the most important things I do is put them in, listen to podcasts, listen to music, and go for walks, throughout the day. That's just my way of just getting away from screens for a bit. But yeah, I think professionally, Microsoft Teams has been absolutely critical for how we've operated across the year.
Amanda, is there anything that springs to mind for you?
Yeah, I guess similar to Mark, just using the whole suite of Google solutions. I mean, we work with I'm part of a global team, so I work really closely with the US, and obviously I'm covering both sides of the world within the international region. So it's really important that we stay connected. So I don't know how we would have done that without the likes of Zoom and Google Drives and things like that. On a personal level, my Peloton is probably the best investment in technology. Yeah, I think that's definitely helped keep me sane over the last few months.
Amazing. I think the Pelotons they've done so well out of this time. And any friends I know who have one are obsessed. So very exciting. And Chenwa, we'll finish with you.
Bit of both. We're on teams, and gosh, I mean, the amount of collaboration has just never been better. Or at least information sharing, so you just pop in a meeting, and being able to see colleagues from around the world has never felt more natural. I think we used to kind of make it a big thing, and now it's just a matter of setting up a meeting. So I think that's a fantastic thing that's really enabled our international collaboration. And personally, yeah, like Mark, they've got these amazing wireless headphones. I go for a walk. I listen to them as I walk back from dropping off my son at nursery, and just zone out for a bit. And not using my eyes is even more important than ever. So yeah, those are the two simple things.
That's great. The next question I'm going to pass to Amanda, is there any pitfalls that we should look out for in 2021?
Yeah, I think, I think now that we have a bit of visibility on what the future holds, I think just, there's a risk in not carefully planning for those moments, and just, expecting that we'll be in this kind of state of the unknown for forever. But I think it's really important that we are planning to capitalize on demand and, a bounce back, and also just making sure that for different businesses that our products are made available as and when people will start to need them. And other than that, I think just going back to the overall theme of this discussion, I think it's striking the balance between agility and strategy, and making sure that whatever decisions we make as marketing teams or as businesses really offer longevity, and that, the messages that we are promoting can continue to resonate despite whether or not government restrictions change, and, we're kind of restricted in what we can do and consume. So yeah, I think the potential pitfall is missing the real opportunities to plan, but conversely, not being agile enough to change when we need to. So I think it's just about striking that balance.
I think one of the interesting things for me is the opportunity for innovation, because I think everyone now has heard the term the next roaring 20s, but the suggestion is, after disruption of this level, the opportunity for innovation in so many different ways is going to be there. And again, coming back to this theme, it's like if you're literally focused on responding to what's in front of you, and you're not looking for those bigger innovation opportunities, you're going to potentially miss out on exponential growth. So look big, think big, but also be agile at the same time.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's a matter of looking at not just the touch points with consumers, but really thinking about the new measurements that you'll need to kind of claim credit for what you're doing. As Mark's been saying, we now have these really strategic conversations with our clients, and with multiple clients that we normally wouldn't have as much direct influence, not direct influence, but, influence with to talk about, what are the new ways that marketing is going to benefit e-com. And I think that integration means that KPIs are going to have to change. So I think it's a chance to really wholesale reevaluate how metrics are working with each other, to ensure that, at the end of the day, whatever the messaging may be, you're still measuring and using data in a way that reflects your future priorities, or the priorities of going forward.
Yes, I think there is a lot to think about from this discussion, and I want to thank you all so much. It's been really interesting. We've got so many questions in from the audience. I'm going to finish us on a little quick fire question, and it's, what is the first thing you're going to do when lockdown ends? So we're all in the UK. If you're in the comments or on the live stream, please let us know in the comments what was the first thing you did if you're already luckily out of lockdown, or what's the first thing you want to do. But Mark, I'll pass it to you first.
Oh God, I'm going to be really predictable. I just want to go to the pub. I mean, so badly with my mates. I mean, I'm struggling to think of something more meaningful, but yeah, going to the pub with my friends and family as well.
Chenwa?
Getting out of London and just going somewhere really interesting. Yeah, I think the pub is one of them, but maybe further afield as well.
And Amanda?
I have to say this working for WeWork, that I just want to go back to the office. I'm just desperate to get away from this building work and see my colleagues face to face.
Yeah.
Soon. We are coming up to a lot of hope, and yes, let us know in the comments what you guys are going to do as soon as you have finished lockdown, or what you did first. So I want to say a huge thank you to everyone that has tuned in, my panel of guests, and to everyone in the background who's helped make today possible. Thank you so much. It's been such an interesting discussion. The recording of this episode will be immediately available on the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions page, and you can continue the conversation on LinkedIn with the hashtag #LiveWithMarketers. We hope to see you on the next at-home edition of Live with Marketers. Thanks and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.